Now, one concept that is very important to any automation framework is the concept of domain-specific languages. And if you look at what we did with our test, we basically created what's called an internal DSL. And an internal DSL is a domain-specific language or a language specific to the domain of our application and even more specifically testing our application, but it's still in C sharp. All of our code was C sharp code. We didn't go into another language. So we built a dialect inside of a language, a subset of C sharp, a way of using C sharp, some semantics that constituted an entire different testing language, and that is the API of the framework. And this is key. You want to make sure that you develop a good internal DSL because that makes it so that your tests are easy to understand, you can easily enforce the rules, and you know how to build the framework. And this will take time. As you're building out your framework, you'll find that if you pay attention to creating a DSL, to being consistent, that language will develop, and it will really make it easy for someone to get on board with the testing framework and to understand it very quickly. Now let's take a look at an internal DSL example. This is going to look very similar to the code that we wrote here. You can see that this is a good example of having a language within a language. This is some C sharp code, but you might not be able to tell that it's C sharp code because we've kept it very simple, and it's the way that we're using this that makes it its own language or have its own syntax. So you could just read this pretty much like English. We can say pages.login go to. Okay, so we're going to go to the login page. We're going to log in with the default user, and then we're going to go to the customers page, and we'll add a new customer. Now, once you've created an internal DSL, you may want to take things to the next level and actually create a true DSL or an external DSL. And so if you create an external DSL, what you would be doing is you would create your own testing language. It would exist outside of C sharp, and you use an interpreter or compiler to compile that down to C sharp to run your tests. Now, this is definitely one of those advanced things that you can do with an automation framework, but if you get to this stage, if you have a successful automation project and you want to take things to the next level, this is a good route to go. So let's take a look at an example of what an external DSL for an automated testing framework might look like. So this same example, as we had seen with our internal DSL, we've been able to make things a lot more succinct because we're able to create our own keywords, our own entire language. So for this external DSL, we might say login with default user, add customer with default customer. And this constitutes two commands in our DSL. So this is something just to think about. It's fairly advanced, but you definitely want to make sure that you at least have an internal DSL because that will make your tests very easy to understand, maintain, and use in the future.